Good evening. I am hereby calling to order the January 14th, 2019 meeting of the Mayfield Heights City Council. May I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Balestria,
Present.
Mr. DeJohn,
Here.
Mrs. Finney,
Here.
Mr. Mano,
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Here.
Mrs. Snyder,
Here.
Mrs. Tressi. Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening and wish everybody a happy new year. First, we'll start out with the approval of the minutes from the council meeting on December 10th, 2018. I trust everyone had time to read them over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the council meeting on December 10th, 2018?
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to the minutes? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I abstain. I was absent. Anyone opposed? The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved as written. Next on the agenda are correspondence and announcements. Does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements? Mrs. Snyder?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is my pleasure to announce that we are ready to launch the new Hometown Hero program to Mayfield Heights. The application is available to any resident or family member to purchase a Hometown Hero banner, which will be displayed on Mayfield Road from Memorial Day through Veterans Day. It is for any active, retired, or deceased veteran of all branches of the military. Please visit the city's website for all the details or contact City Hall for the applications. This is a super exciting program to be in our city. We will have a banner on display at the community center as well, and I also have applications this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. That sounds like a wonderful program. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on, starting with the mayor.
Thank you and good evening. You may notice that we are one extra person up here this evening. I'd like to introduce Karen Fagan, our new finance director. She is going to be taking Bob Tribby's place, who has announced his final day will be January 31st of this month. So thank you, Bob, for everything you've done over all these years. You've been a tremendous asset to me and help to me since I've been in office, so I appreciate it, Bob. And welcome, Karen. Okay, I'm also happy to announce that 911 Cellular, which is a safety app used by many local communities, including Mayfield Village, will be available to Mayfield Heights residents during the second week of February. This is a free app for residents, and it's downloadable to their smartphones. The app includes technology that allows safety forces to respond even more quickly to residents and businesses in the community. The app features include an emergency button that, when pressed, goes directly to Mayfield Heights Police Department dispatchers. It includes an indoor global positioning system, which enables dispatch to see the location of a distressed individual within 300 feet. It can also send medical info to dispatch as well if that information is entered upon registration. Global geo-fencing ensures that emergency calls from a cell phone go to the correct department every time. There's a feature that is iReport, which allows residents to send instant and anonymous tips about suspicious activity, safety concerns, or service requests. Even when anonymous, dispatchers can start a two-way conversation. Photos and videos can be attached if desired. Emergencies can also be sent via text, while talking is not ideal. Resources provide residents with instant access to information from the city, including the smoke detector program, vacation house watch, permit applications, and program registration forms, just to name a few of the available information on there. Friend Watch, which is another feature which is kind of neat, enables residents to notify up to 3 family members or friends of their location and how long they intend to be there. So if they're not back or don't respond by that time, it sends a notification to those individuals. So you can look for more information in the City Focus and on our social media sites. If you haven't heard, Chick-fil-A celebrated its grand opening on Thursday, January 10th. They have hired 110 workers and will be open between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. and are closed on Sundays. It's a great addition, I think, to Golden Gate Plaza, and so far, so good. The traffic has been controllable. A few other store openings in our Silk Body Boutique, which is on 6647 Mayfield Road, Fulton's Powerhouse, which services landscape equipment, Aspen Dental, and Sherwin-Williams. Fried rice carry-out hibachi. I don't know if anybody's noticed that over there on Mayfield and 91. And also, we have a Hallmark store back in Golden Gate, which is a nice thing to see. Karen's Hallmark. Our staff continues to work with the TLCI Core Group. Transportation for Livable Communities Initiative is what TLCI stands for. To help identify ways to improve transportation needs of pedestrians and cyclists throughout the city. We do have a public meeting coming up February 6th at 7 o'clock at the community center. The public notification for the meeting will be sent via social media, city website, and the Sun newspaper. And there's information at City Hall and the community center. The project is funded by a grant secured through NOACA, and AECom is the consultant on that project. The service department has recycling schedules printed on magnets for your convenience. The magnets will be available to pick up at City Hall or the service department. And lastly, Community Partnership on Aging, in partnership with AARP Foundation Tax Aid Program, will again be providing free tax preparation for adults 60 plus. They will begin taking tax appointments on Wednesday, January 16th for members of all the 5 communities that the CPA serves. So if you call 216-291-3902, you can get an appointment, and I suggest if you are going to employ their assistance that you do so soon, because it does fill up relatively quickly. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Mr. Mano.
During our holiday recess, I had several phone calls from residents concerning 2 things. One, people traveling along 271 past our storage site by the salt bin wanted to know whether or not we could possibly plant some trees or some kind of screening in there to screen off that site from the freeway. The other ones were about the last house on Maplewood next to the lady that was raising the pigs. I guess there's a landscaper in there. I talked to Lenny Morgano about it once. He already cited them for pulling all their equipment on that side yard and putting it behind the property. That side yard there, I believe, part of that is owned by Shimo. And now you can't see it because there's snow on it, but when the snow melts, take a ride over there and look at that. They've gone over the curb, and there are ruts that deep that go all the way to the back of that property. And I couldn't see all the way back there, but they may be, in fact, storing equipment back there again. But that really needs to be checked out because it really looks terrible. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mayor, I just have a quick question. If you remember a few years ago, it's probably 18 months to 2 years, Detective Oberoster said he was going to all the retailers to put security cameras in. Have they all complied? I mean, I noticed some stores when you walk in, you can see the camera, but I wondered if they all complied with our...
I couldn't say that for sure that they all complied, but a vast majority of them did. I don't know if it's 100%.
I didn't...
Most? Yeah. It's pretty close to 100%. A vast majority of them have done it.
Thanks. Anybody else? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Next, we'll go on to Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Seeing none, we'll go to Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby. No report? Any questions for Mr. Tribby or for Karen? Is your name Fegan or Fagan? Fagan. Welcome to Mayfield. Next, we'll move on to reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We'll start out tonight with Building Committee, Mrs. Snyder.
The building committee has not met, so I have no report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Are there any questions for Mrs. Snyder? Seeing none, we'll go on to Finance and Audit Committee, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Finance and Audit Committee did not meet, so I do not have a report.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Next, we'll move on to Legislative Committee, Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Legislative Committee has not met, and therefore I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Teresi. Mrs. Teresi, do we have an update on this tabled item? Are we gonna meet again on that?
We are going to meet. We were waiting until after the new year so that we could have a majority of people here to attend.
Okay, I was just looking at that. Any questions for Mrs. Snyder? I'm sorry, Mrs. Teresi. Okay, next we'll move on to Public Works and Service Committee, Mr. Balestria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Public Works and Services Committee did not meet. However, council was copied on a memo from Mr. Fernaro regarding the road program update for 2019 and 2020. Two things are on our agenda as in forms of motions this evening, which were left over from 2018 for the 2019 road program, and we can discuss those as they come up.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Are there any questions for Mr. Balestria? Mr. Mano?
Mike, on that road program, there was listings on 1 through 9, I believe.
10.
1 through 10. Is there any way at all that we might be able to juggle a couple of those numbers? We have listed as 9 the corporate park, and I'm concerned about the corporate park because I've had people from there complain about the roads. Is there any chance that we might be able to juggle those around a little bit and move the corporate park up?
Well, nothing's been approved per se.
Yeah, why don't we wait to discuss this till it comes up? Why don't we do that? And then we'll bring Mr. Fernaro up. Any other questions for Mr. Balestria? Mr. Fernaro, thank you for this cheat sheet. It's gonna make my life much easier when all the residents call. I think I'm gonna keep it with me. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Parks and Recreation, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Taste of Italy will be held on Saturday, February 23rd from 6:30 to 10:30 p.m. at the Ross DeJohn Community Center. The cost is $30 per person. This event is open to all 21 and over and includes an open bar, appetizers, and all-you-can-eat pasta dinner complete with pasta, meatballs, sausage, chicken cutlets, salad, rolls, plus our dessert table full of cakes, cookies, biscotti, tiramisu, and much more. New this year, we will be adding a wine taste as well as a homemade wine contest for those who enjoy making homemade wine. Reservations can be made with the Park and Recreation Department. Registration opens on January 28th for kids in grades K-3 for our first and 10 flag football program. Program details can be found on our website or by calling 440-442-2627. And Park and Recs will be holding a meeting in these chambers tomorrow evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Are there any questions for Mr. Mano? Seeing none, we'll move on to Safety and Transportation, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight on the agenda, we have Resolution 2019-5. That is the FEMA grant that the City of Mayfield Heights approved. I'd like to commend Chief Elliott for applying for that grant. And this city is going to receive roughly $133,130 from that grant. And Chief Elliott is going to use the grant to purchase air packs. And he'll probably come up during the public portion and discuss this a little bit more. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Seeing none, we'll move on to Board of Zoning, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. On the agenda, we have 2 resolutions that we can discuss when they come up tonight. I do encourage the applicants, if present, to speak during the public portion. And the BZA will meet tomorrow night here in council chambers, 7 p.m. There are 3 items on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Next, we'll move on to Planning Commission, Mr. Belstria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Planning met on December the 7th. Council was copied on those minutes. We do have 2 motions on the agenda tonight, and we can discuss them as they come up.
Thank you, Mr. Belstria. Are there any questions for Mr. Belstria? Next, we'll move on to the public portion of the meeting. Pursuant to City Code, each person will be allotted 5 minutes to speak, with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for the entire public portion. Although it is not a time for public debate, this is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Please know there will be no personal attacks or comments. Also, if you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard, please raise your hand and be recognized and approach the podium. At that time, we will ask you to state your name and address for the record. It is now 7:20. I'll open up the public portion. Sir in the back? I can't say the hat. I'm sorry, I couldn't really see.
My name is Nicole Flesher. I'm here with Silk Body Boutique. My address is 1771 Sound Center Road, Gates Mills, Ohio, 44040. I was here for the zoning meeting last month to be zoned as a body art facility to do microblading and semi-permanent cosmetics. So I can answer any questions that you have.
Do you want to answer them now or wait till we get that part of the, why don't we wait till we get to that part of the agenda and then come back to you? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
We'll call you up then. Thank you. Anybody else like to be heard this evening? Sir?
I'm John Molchan, 1966, Reed's Court Trail, Westlake, Ohio, 44145. Here in connection with the motion to approve the Planning Commission on the self-storage facility. And I finally have pictures I can show. I don't know if it's easier if I just give you all a copy. Is that a yes? Okay.
We can see it for now.
Move it down a little. There you go.
So these are the elevations for the proposed facility. It is an addition to the existing building. I know Councilman Mano previously wanted us to tear down the old building. There are some complications with that related to the existing tenants. But what we have done is completely reskinned anything that's exposed so you can't see any part of the old building. We are also going to we're going to rebuild the portions of the wall. There's a 6-foot masonry screen wall, about 600 feet of screen wall, that we will rebuild from the foundation up the sections that have fallen. And there's 3 other sections that have structural cracks that have to be built from the foundation back up. So those are the 2 concerns that Councilman Mano previously had. Pass these out after I. The facility, for those who haven't seen it before, because the rest of you are probably getting tired of it. We do intend to have a wine cellar in it, where people who drink wine much more expensive than the wine I just bought at Costco. And it'll have a drive-through, so you pull in out of the weather if it's raining, sleeting, snowing, cold, miserable. 95 degrees with 80% humidity. You'll be able to load and unload everything from inside the car. With that, I'll go to the site plan. Which I can also give you copies of as I step down. There are, the existing building is this portion right over here. This will be the addition to the western part of the building and the drive-through on the southern part. To this thing, we've agreed to 5 changes based on the traffic study. There's going to be a right-hand turn only sign as you pull in the east entrance. To the north, a driveway, but they've requested that it be a minimum of 24 feet wide. Your code only allows 24 feet as the maximum. So we'll make the driveway all across that north side 24 feet wide. We'll put arrows around the southeast corner and a dividing line so the traffic will stay in its own lane as you go around the corner so there's no accidents from people pulling around. And on the southeast driveway, we will also that's also about 20 feet wide. We're gonna make it the maximum 24 feet wide and make the turn radius larger so the fire trucks can make that turn around the building. So I think those are the only concerns that there were regarding the site plan. So if anybody has any questions.
Can we wait until you, that part of the agenda, and then we'll address them then? Thank you.
I'll be back.
Anybody else like to speak this evening, sir?
My name is Robert Miller. I'm here in regards to the Conrads that's on the agenda with Davison Smith Sordo Architects, 26031B Center Ridge Road, Westlake, Ohio. Just wanted to let you know if there are any questions that come up, we are here in the audience.
Okay, thank you so much. Anybody else like to be heard this evening? Oh, Chief Elliott?
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. John, for having this ordinance on the agenda for this evening. Before you tonight is an ordinance, as Mr. John said, for a grant that we received through FEMA to purchase 17 complete air packs, 18 additional air masks, 18 voice amplifiers, a rapid intervention bag, and a spare cylinder for each of those packs. I gave you some information on Friday for your weekend reading, but I found out some information today and I provided you an additional memo. Basically what happened is we were hoping that we can get the integrated thermal imaging cameras put into 2 of our air masks. What that would mean is as we go into a fire, we would have the thermal imaging right in our mask, hands-free, and we could see things such as a body or hot spots in the walls and those types of things. Currently, our imaging cameras are handheld. We thought this would be a good benefit for us, and that's why we wanted them on 2 of our masks. Found out, however, that FEMA will not approve that as cost. So what we had to do this evening is I subtracted that amount from the bid. So the bid for the air packs is $128,240. So that would increase our excess funds to $48,90. And that money we would be able to be used for additional equipment or purchases that we would look at down the road. We could purchase extra spare air mask in case one breaks. We could buy additional spare cylinders, maybe an additional harness. Those types of things, we could use that money for that types of purchase. So the bid's down just a little bit, and our excessive funds are up a little bit to account for that. the current memo that I gave you, has those figures in there, so, when we get to that portion of the meeting, I could be happy to answer any questions or answer them now if you have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion at 7:30. First on our agenda, we'll need a motion to adjourn to executive session at the end of regular business. Can I have a motion to approve an executive session? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Mano. Can I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn? Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. After our regular meeting, we will adjourn to executive session. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2019-1. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2019-1, a resolution authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health regarding the provision of Phase 2 stormwater services in 2019 through 2021 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Manos, seconded by Mrs. Teresi. Roll call, please, Lisa, on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Any discussion? Nothing? Okay, can we have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes, Resolution 2019-1 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2019-2. Mr. Murphy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2019-2, a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding with the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District and the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District to provide technical assistance regarding public information and public education during 2019 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Could I have a roll call, please, on the motion to suspend?
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Manos, seconded by Mrs. Teresi. Any discussion? Mr. Balestria.
I have a question for the mayor. May. Mayor, just so I have an understanding, when I was reading over the contract, we pay the SWCD the amount of $5,500 for this program. However, we get reimbursed from the sewer district for that amount. Is that my understanding?
We can use cost share funds to reimburse, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have to request that, or is that part of the?
Yeah. Yes, we request it.
And are we? We will request that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Any other questions, discussion?
Real quick, Madam President, just this resolution and the one before, we are required to do these things, so we're just contracting in the resolution 2019-1, contracting with the Board of Health to provide that service, and now through Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District, we're going to employ them or partner with them to provide our pipe program. So, just so everyone understands.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I have a motion, can I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. 2019-2 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2019-3. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2019-3, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Silk Body Boutique, 6647 Mayfield Road, permission to perform microblading and semi-permanent cosmetics as accessory uses at the beauty salon. Cuyahoga County permanent parcel numbers 862-15-025 and 862-15-026. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Can we have a roll call, please, on the motion to suspend?
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a roll call, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Discussion, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, adding to Mr. Murphy's first reading, in the resolution, Section 1, there is an understanding that with this permission, it does not include tattoos or body piercing. She does have an accessory use. She is moving, and the Board of Health needs her to reapply. They do not license the applicant, they license the location. She's looking to extend her microblading to cosmetic semi. She explained to us that the tool that she uses is not a tattoo tool, and nothing that goes with it is like tattooing. Now, we've had this in front of us before, but she's looking to extend to different parts of the body and face.
And Mrs. Sabetta, was this a unanimous decision by the
Yes,
BZA? Yes.
No, this was not. It was
It
a
was not.
4-to-1 vote
Okay.
to approve to extend the services with the condition.
4-1, okay. Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Where exactly is this Silk Boutique located?
Mayor.
Now? Or where was it before?
Well, let's ask, where was it before? Where is it now?
It was by Piccolo's, right, in that center? You can, come on out.
Hey, the applicant's gonna come up.
And it's a variance, am I correct? That we're,
Accessory use.
so it's not a variance? It didn't go to BZA for a variance?
Yes, it's called an accessory use.
Yes,
Originally, is that what, I'm sorry.
Yes.
no, right now.
Ma'am, would you like to tell us where you were located previously?
I was located at 1430 Som Center. It was across the street from Eastgate, in the Kolinsky building. And now I'm across the street from Walmart, 6647 Mayfield Road. So literally like 600 feet away.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mrs. Teresi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So in that shopping center, if I'm not mistaken, there's Boost is the first store,
I'm right next to Boost.
and that's called Republic.
So Republic used to have the two locations, 6647 and 6645. They got rid of the 6647 part of it because they weren't able to fill it. I then leased it through Michael Albino, the 6647 part of it. So there's two different
you leased
doorways.
from the owner,
Yes. From
So-
the owner.
the owner of that shopping center.
Yes.
So is it not a variance that goes with the land? Isn't that what variances do?
Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. No, it is, excuse me, it is not a variance. It is a declaration of accessory use. What the Board of Zoning Appeals, if requested, can make a determination that a certain use in a certain district that is believed by the board to be in general keeping with the uses specifically authorized in the district, then they can permit that specific use. In other words, the building department had a question as to whether or not this was a permitted use. So it was referred to the Board of Zoning Appeals, as stated in the codified ordinances, for them to weigh in on whether or not it would be a permitted use, and that has to be approved by council. But it's not a variance.
So it does not go with, it's not gonna stay with that location if she moves again?
If she moves again, no, it would not specifically stay with that location. But if somebody else came in, and I'm sure the Board of Health would require them to get approved by the city as well,
Yes, that's correct, in their application.
in that location, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Mano?
This applicant was before us before and was specifically asked whether or not her services included tattooing. And she said no. Now she's back before us again, and in Mr. Kramer's explanation here, it says, body art is defined as an individual, including an operator, who performs one or more of the following procedures. 1, tattooing. 2, permanent cosmetics. 3, body piercings. If we open up this door for these procedures to be done in our city, how much longer is it gonna be before we have other people coming in here and applying for tattoo parlors? And I don't think we want that. And that was the questioning, the line of the questioning, the first time the applicant came before us. And we were told absolutely not, there is no tattooing to be done. But yet, the explanation here says the first thing is tattooing. I think this is be a huge mistake on our part to open that door, because she says she's not gonna do it, but once this has been approved, somebody else can come in here and doesn't have to say, I'm not gonna do it, because it's already been approved.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, we were all disturbed. I even looked it up on Wikipedia, why they use the word body art, because that's what it means. And the person using the word is the Board of Health. That's the word they use. That is why the condition was put in, that she would be allowed to perform the semi-permanent and the microblading with this condition of having no permission to do tattooing or body piercing. It's written in the resolution under section 1. We are not giving her permission. We are giving her permission to do semi-permanent. She wants to get involved with more of a doctors in the area concerning breast reconstruction. And that is as far as it went. There will be no tattooing. We actually asked her about, and you can ask her here, she's standing, what exactly is the difference?
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Mrs. Snyder?
My question is, I thought tattooing like just of eyebrows for maybe patients that, or people that have lost their eyebrows due to various different medical conditions. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
It was
that's
gonna
what
be
the
performed.
semi-permanent
Exactly.
cosmetics is, and I had explained this in the zoning meeting as well, it's a very broad, I guess, description, the way that the health board and even Google and Wikipedia puts it. However, I'm inspected once a month by the Board of Health, so the Board of Health comes out and sees what I'm using. The tools that I'm using, I'm not able to give a tattoo. I'm not, number one, I'm not certified to do that. Number two, I don't have the equipment to do that. Excuse me. And the Board of Health, when they inspect, they'll know exactly what is going on. They come in randomly, they schedule sometimes. So there is no way that I could even, I would never do it, body art as far as tattooing. I'm strictly cosmetic based. I'm trying to work with breast cancer survivors in getting brows that they weren't able to grow back after chemo, working in the breast reconstruction into getting back an areola. Once you have breast reconstruction, you lose that, and there's a lot of women walking around not feeling human because of it. So that is the type of semi-permanent cosmetics that I would like to get involved in. It has nothing to do with body art or piercing. Unfortunately, the way the Board of Health zones it is under those circumstances. However, like Mrs. Sabetta had said, giving that definition, that goes directly to the Board of Health, and they then see that. So then there too is something when they come to inspect me, they're able to say, okay, well, the city has even said she's not allowed to do this, this, and this, which I have no desire to do body art.
Thank you. Mr. Mano?
My question will be to Ms. Murphy. If we go ahead and we do this, and somebody came in here and wanted to open a tattoo parlor, what chances do we have to defend ourselves if we've gone ahead and done this?
Mr. Murphy?
We have permitted this type of body art. As Ms. Flesher said, she specifically is not tattooing. She doesn't have the equipment and she doesn't have the licensing and maybe the know-how, whatever. So if somebody came in and requested tattooing, they would have to either comply with the city's ordinances regarding tattooing or request a variance to permit tattooing at that location. So no, it doesn't set a precedent. That's a long answer.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. DeJohn?
Just for a clarification, is there a separate license for tattooing in the state of Ohio?
There's not a separate license, but there's different inside of the Board of Health. They have certain inspectors that work with cosmetics like microblading, semi-permanent cosmetics, and then they have people that work with actual tattoo parlors. So it's not licensed differently. The only thing that I think is different with the license is one says body art and one says piercings. So they're two different forms, I guess you could say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Teresi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Fletcher, when you came the first time, you wanted to do microblading and do eyebrows. At that time, did you have customers that you were working with or clients at that time? And now you're coming back to add semi-permanent cosmetics.
It's basically two different techniques. So microblading is using a handheld tool that creates what looks like hair strokes in the skin. So it's implanting pigment into the skin to look like a hair stroke. However, with the semi-permanent cosmetics, you are able to use a handheld tool to give a different technique. Some people want a more solid look on their brow opposed to what look like hair strokes. So basically all it is a different technique, but microblading is called microblading. That's just the term for it. But it's a form of semi-permanent cosmetics, if that helps.
And you have clients,
yes, that would like both. You know, when you come in and you just offer microblading and you have people that want a different look and you're not able to give it to them, of course you have to send them somewhere else. And then I got certified so I was double certified in microblading, and then I got certified in the semi-permanent cosmetic, which is called like a powder brow. Like I said, it's all a form of semi-permanent cosmetics, but there's just different terms and different techniques.
thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Could I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Mano?
No.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2019-3 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2019-4. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2019-4, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in upholding the direction of the Building Department made to Casme Family LLC to construct a garage at 5919 Maplewood Road as required in the point of sale inspection. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-10-062, and consequently denying its appeal. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to suspend?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Could I please have a roll call and suspension?
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Can I have a motion to approve? Do we do approve? No, we didn't. Okay. Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Teresi. Discussion, Mrs. Sabetta. Excuse me? Oh, okay. Okay, if we need anything, we'll call you up. Thank you. If you want to stamp in the front. Oh, did you want to talk? Yeah, because we had a public portion. You didn't, okay. Oh, go ahead up. I didn't notice you.
Need a motion to reopen?
Okay, we'll need a motion to reopen the public portion. Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Mano. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You all have 5 minutes to speak. We'll need your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Danya James, D-O-N-Y-A-E, James, J-A-M-E-S. My address is 5707 Meadow Lane, Bedford, Ohio, 44146. That's it?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I spoke with Najim, and he stated that when he purchased the property, he had spoke with the building inspector for Mayfield Heights, and they denied a garage being built on the property. They said it wasn't enough space to build a garage, but they did give him a permit to build or to put a shed on the property. So I know there is a shed. He did send me the permit for the shed, I believe. Yes, so I do have the permit for the shed, but the garage, they said the area was too small, and they're holding, I believe, $15,000 in escrow. And so what he said he needed was a letter to be written to the title company in order for them to release the money from escrow.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jameson, would you like to come up, please? I think we might need a little explanation here.
The home at Maplewood some time ago, I think, the original point of sale was done, or one of the point of sales was done in 2014. Right, and there must have been some miscommunication, because the inspector at the time, I just don't see him telling her that. He did leave it off the list, so there was an error. He should have put on there garage to be built at the time of the point of sale. So all these years have gone by, and Mr. How do you pronounce? Cosme, he's bought a package of properties, some of them in Mayfield Heights, and he's selling them all at one time. So in 2018, when we did the point of sale inspection, the inspector asked that they put on there that a garage is required. And that's where we're at. So because it was a matter of miscommunication or whatever happened then, doesn't make it right now. So that's what they're appealing, that there's a hardship in us asking them to build a garage, which they're required to do.
And the BZA upholded that decision.
I'm pretty
About-
sure unanimously.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Mr. Mano?
Is the inspector that did that inspection still employed in the city of Mayfield No, Heights? it was Bob Rodick, who's no longer with us.
Any other questions? Mrs. Teresi?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Every house, because I drove down, and every neighbor has a two-car garage on
Right.
that 40, it's a 40-foot lot, but at 5923, they have a 20 by 20 garage. 5927 has a a 20 by 20. And 5918 has a garage that's 552 square feet, even larger. And they're all 40-foot lots, but they're quite deep. So,
that out to the applicant.
Thank you, Mrs. Teresi. Are you done?
I am. Thanks, Madam
Thank
Chairman.
you.
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Thank you, Madam President. The committee felt that the applicant failed to demonstrate the practical difficulty, warranting a reversal of the building department's direction. This was a unanimous vote to uphold the building department direction and deny the applicant's appeal. They felt this was a point-of-sale requirement, and the property has room to build a garage. I did ask for a copy of the aerial, and Mrs. Tracy is correct. Every home on that street has a two-car garage. And he did speak that he is already in process of sale of all these properties. And the new owner is asking for a split of the 15,000. So he's still negotiating, and the new owner understands that a garage needs to come here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Mrs. Teresi?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Mrs. Sabetta, this gentleman is basically buys and flips properties. Is that correct? He doesn't live in the property?
He's not living in this one.
And so he wants to sell all of them together as one unit. And then,
Yes,
so he's gonna sell them like to an investment company or another flipper?
yes, and they're not, they're not all in, Mayfield Heights.
No, but
But
how many are in Mayfield Heights that he's gonna flip in this
I don't
little
know.
group?
I don't know.
And then they'll all be
Could
rental
one on-
properties.
On Elmwood as well, but the buyer is another investor. They buy houses up like this all the time.
Mrs. Teresi, let's point out, they were already rental properties.
Right, right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Jameson. Can we have a roll call, please, Lisa? Oh, I forgot you were gone.
Mrs. Teresi?
Wait, let's remind everyone, yes, you are agreeing with the BZA in upholding the direction of the building department that they have to build the garage. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2019-4 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2019-5. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2019-5, a resolution accepting a certain bid for self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA, base pieces and associated equipment for the Division of Fire. And the company to be purchased from is Warren Fire Equipment. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend? Moved by Mrs. Snyder,
Second.
seconded by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Teresi. Discussion, we heard from the chief. Is there anything else, Mr. DeJohn?
Yes, this was a 95%, 5% match. So the city has to pay 5% of the cost. Chief Elliott did send this out for bid, and he is going with the higher bid here because the equipment he feels is better for his department, and I'd have to agree with that after reading into it. So I'm urging this council to approve this.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn.
And one more thing, I just have a, one question is, why didn't FEMA approve the extra funds to go to the, other technology,
Mayor, do you know?
each seeking technology?
No, I don't know.
We'll ask Chief.
But I do have a question for the chief after he explains that, if I could.
Chief Elliott, did you hear the question? I'm not sure if you heard it. About FEMA?
Yes, I did. Right now, you know, the technology changes so much and so many different aspects. And right now, they're only approving things that are supported by the NFPA, which is National Fire Prevention Association, so Protection Association. So right now, that particular technology is not being supported by the NFPA. So FEMA will not. Even those little handheld cameras that we spoke about are not NFPA approved, but the larger ones that we have are, with the larger screens and stuff like that. So things change pretty rapidly. I'm pretty certain in a certain amount of time those will probably be, but for the sake of this bid, I didn't feel like it was prudent for us to put in for something that we were gonna have to share the cost 100% on, so we're gonna hold off on that purchase, hence why we have a little bit lower of a bid, without the optional part that you saw for $13.25.
Thank you,
All right,
Chief.
thank you.
I think, Mayor, you had a question?
Well, you answered my question for one thing. I wanted to make sure that I was reading that right, that the option was $1,325. That is for one mask?
Correct.
One mask. And you were applying for two?
So when we submit for these grants through FEMA, we've determined what project we want to submit for. And when we originally submitted for it, we did submit with those cameras in the mask, and that was on the original proposal that was sent to FEMA. So a lot of times, like with this, for instance, they just tell you you've been approved for this much money, but they don't necessarily break down exactly what you're approved for. So sometimes you gotta do a little bit of research and find out what's going on, so with that. So those weren't, even though they didn't tell us that until we did get a further explanation from FEMA. And the reason we even got alerted from this is the vendor actually told us about it. So the vendor even alerted to us that, you know, you might have problems with the grant on this, and we did get confirmed with FEMA, and they did confirm that those were not NFPA approved as of yet, meaning that we couldn't use excess funds to purchase that.
I think Mrs. Snyder has a question. Mrs. Snyder?
Yes, thank you. Can these cameras ever be added to these particular units, or would you need a new apparatus?
No, they could be added to it. They do, you know, they pop on and off through it. So that's how we would kind of work, you know, or we just buy an additional face piece that had that built into it. And that was one of the reasons why we really wanted to use the Scott, because when you're crawling into a fire and you have your hands full of tools, or if you know, encountered a body that you had to pull out, having a camera in your hand, you know, it's hard to do things with one hand. And so it was pretty impressive having that built-in, integrated into your face piece, and it was very intriguing, and it was gonna be a good thing. I think in due time, we're gonna be able to implement that simply enough. It's just, we could buy it today if we wanted to spend a $1,300 out of pocket for it. And, you know, but for the purpose of approving this bid, I didn't feel like we should include it in a bid, since it's not gonna be part of the grant.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Well, that was gonna be my comment. Maybe now is the time to implement a couple of them, since we are saving so much money, and the grant is so large and our out-of-pocket expense is not that much. Maybe now's the time to include a couple of those, so you start, you know, down that road sooner rather than later. That was just my thought.
Just as I stated, and I appreciate that, we could definitely look into that and work that in. When in 1993, when I started, we didn't even have the thermal imaging cameras, and remember purchasing them, and they were almost like $20,000 for one unit. So you could see it's like computers today. You know, you bought a computer that was thousands and thousands of dollars, and you get it now for a couple $100s. And the same kind of goes with this technology. The price has come down on it, but having that built into that face piece of the mask was it was pretty impressive. And I think it would be a good thing for the initial entry crews that are making entry into already a hostile environment, to have it a little bit extra hands to be able to do a little bit more work and actually see that heads-up display in their mask as we're working.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Mr. Belstrap?
Chief, I just want to start off by saying I trust your judgment implicitly with the safety of our men, but just for the knowledge, for my sake and maybe for the council, the other bid was like $18,000 less. And if I remember reading your material, that some of the men, it was like 80% of the men chose one company over the other, or maybe it wasn't the vast majority, like 100% or 99% chose this company. Can you just explain, you know, why maybe some of the men preferred the other, or what the differences were that, you know, you justified, you know, spending an additional $18,000, which I could see we could use some of that money if this equipment is that far less, you know, effective in your judgment, and then using that additional monies for some of this equipment we're talking about.
Well, I'll answer that question. We have to keep in mind that it's not additional monies that we could just purchase. The grant was pretty specific. If you're under $10,000, you gotta go back to the well with FEMA and reallocate funding. So we would probably lose out on a vast majority of our funding that we received. Furthermore, when we had the safety search and rescue trailer up at City Park over, I guess it was in the fall, we tested these two units out pretty extensively.
Okay.
And, you know, firefighters are creatures of habit. I mean, it's just like, you know, certain people, they drive Fords and will drive Fords for the rest of their life. They're never gonna switch because they're comfortable with Ford. You know, I actually was surprised that the number was as high as it was, being that we've had MSAs in the past. And the switch, for an 80% switch told me a lot about a number of things. The comfort of the pack, it was drastic. When you're working into an environment where you have 30 pounds of gear and another 30 pounds on your back, and you're in there for 45 minutes pulling ceiling, and you want something that's comfortable on your back to wear. It's a backbreaker, so comfort is a big deal, and many thought that the comfort of this was superior than the comfort of the other manufacturer. Furthermore, the mask itself provided much better visibility. When you looked at the mask, it had more panoramic view, and I went in there and watched these guys work, and I could hear these guys talking like I'm talking to you right now through the Scott Pack. When I was listening to the MSAs, it sounded like we were talking through a coffee can. So technology is different with the different manufacturers, and after much research and I respect the opinion of the guys that I'm working for. I'm not making a decision based on my preference. They're the guys, I'm not gonna be wearing that air pack in a fire. I'm gonna be outside managing the fire. So I have to kind of go after the guys that are wearing it, working, and overwhelmingly they chose Scott. And for the other safety components of it, we decided that was the lowest and best option for the city.
Okay. Fair enough. Thanks, Chief.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, when we're looking at this resolution now, we're gonna have to change some of the numbers in what he had proposed. So I think we're gonna need a motion to, Lisa, amend the numbers in the grants. So could I have a motion to amend?
What's the
Move.
numbers?
Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Teresi. Could I have a roll call, please?
Have to state how you're amending.
The numbers will be changed according to his new numbers, so we wrote them all down. So if it was
Okay.
one, you wanna do it?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Murphy will read it.
Yeah, the amount of federal funding is reduced from 126,791, which is listed in the resolution, to $122,133.33. And the contract awarded to Warren Fire Equipment is reduced from $130,890, as stated in the resolution, to $128,240. So that would be the two amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. So we need a roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Okay, now we'll need a motion to adopt as amended. Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Mano. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. So, Resolution 2019-5 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2019-6. Mr. Murphy, please.
Resolution number 2019-6, a resolution confirming the intention of the City of Mayfield Heights to sell property that is unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for city purposes via internet auctions, and authorizing the use of certain representative websites to conduct the internet auctions. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Could I have a motion, can I have a, roll call, please, on the motion to suspend?
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Discussion, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Any questions from anyone? Mr. Balestria?
Just one. I see that we listed 3 different internet sites to use that the city intends to engage in. My understanding is we won't use those all at the same time, correct? You're not gonna put those all out as an auction at the same time because it's gonna create a
Cer-
conflict.
No, certain property goes on different websites, depending on the property that's for sale.
All right.
Thank you. Anyone else? Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2019-6 has been adopted. Next, we have no ordinance this evening, so move on to motions. Next on our agenda, I'm gonna ask Mrs. Snyder to chair motion A, since I have a personal relationship with the property owner. Mrs. Snyder?
Thank you. Motion A, Mr. Murphy to read.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chairman. Motion to confirm the decision of the Planning Commission approving a preliminary site plan for an 85,539 square foot self-storage facility addition to the building at 1413 Golden Gate Boulevard, contingent on the approval of all necessary variances.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. We have heard from the applicant, Mr. Mulchin, this evening. And Mr. Balestria, do you have anything to add from planning?
No, this was an approval by the Planning Commission. They do need to seek out their variances. Again, this is a preliminary site plan, and so the Planning Commission went ahead and approved, contingent upon those variances being approved.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from members of council? Mr. DeJohn?
Mr. Balestria, is there garage doors on the outside of this facility that you have to go into to get into the facility?
I think on the north side, the applicant, on the north side, adjacent to where the wall is and adjacent to the rear of those properties on Maplewood, there would be garages that, doors that would be accessible from the outside only, primarily for the use of, and Mr. Mulchin can verify, for landscapers, those type of people that want a store that would have dirty equipment, muddy equipment that they don't want to drive trucks and carts and things like that and trailers through the establishment. So those would be reserved for those type of applicants.
Mr. Mulchin, do you want to come explain that a little bit more, maybe?
Hopefully I got that right, John.
I thought you did an excellent job. If you look at the north elevation, this is the north side of the property facing the Maplewood homes. There are garage doors along the new section of the building. There's also a 6-foot-high masonry wall separating the residential properties from those, so they're reasonably hidden. But yes, therefore, largely you wouldn't want a landscaper bringing his truck full of grass and everything and getting all over the inside of the facility. Plus, anybody could do it. You could park cars, a boat if it'll fit, whatever.
Do we have any questions before I ask? My quick question to you is, how would they enter the garage? Is it like a number, like a pad that is on the outside of the garage, or a remote?
They'll have a key
key.
of some sort.
And are
I
all-
haven't figured that out yet. There are Bluetooth ones that you can use, but I would assume at this point that it's just gonna be a manual key to the garage door. Or metal roll-up doors.
Thank you. Any further questions for planning or Mr. Moulton? A roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
No.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Abstain.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Abstain.
With a 4-1 and 2 abstention vote, this has been adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Next on our agenda is motion B. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Motion to confirm the decision of the Planning Commission approving a preliminary site plan for Conrad's Tire Express and Total Car Care for a 6,270 square foot auto service facility at 5739 Mayfield Road, contingent on the granting of necessary variances and approval of the lot consolidation.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Manos, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Any discussion? Mr. Balestria?
Yeah, this is, again, is the a preliminary site plan from the Planning Commission, where it was approved for Conrad's new site, which is the corner of Eastwood, a property located at the corner of Eastwood and Mayfield. That's 2 lots that would have to be consolidated. They would have to get I believe, they might have to get a setback variance, if I'm not mistaken, for that particular lot. Council was copied on the minutes, and we had quite a extensive discussion. The Conrads in the site that's in Golden Gate will be moving to the new site. Conrads does not own that site. That's in Golden Gate, the building.
Thank you, Mr.
Council's
Balestria.
Madam President, if I could.
Mayor?
I think the variances were for frontage that was 5 feet short and too much parking. I think those were the 2, I believe.
And then lot consolidation as well.
And lot consolidation, right, yeah, those were the.
Mrs. Teresi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Balestria, when I looked at the planning minutes, and then I looked at TMS Engineers' letter, they mentioned number 3. It's recommended that the access drive along Mayfield Road be constructed per ODOT requirements, because it is not. ODOT requires 24 foot, and I believe what they show on the drawing is only 20 foot. Are they gonna, will they
Yeah, they did
agree
submit.
to do this?
Yeah,
Mr. Balestria?
they did submit some additional plans where they were going to meet with some of the ODOT recommendations and come back to planning. I personally like the fact that they didn't have to comply with the ODOT suggestions, because that's going to take away some of the landscaping, and the fire department had already approved the initial plan, so that was okay for them to circumvent the property. So by widening the driveway, it's just part of ODOT's recommendation. I felt that maybe planning should take a look at that and leave it, because it's more contingent with our design corridor with a lot more landscaping. They would lose a little bit of landscaping, they would get closer to the building. But the applicant was willing to do some kind of compliant recommendation on their part. I don't think it was going to be the whole recommendation, but they were going to allow some more footage than what they already had.
Thank you. I know that we always, want to agree with TMS engineers and everything that they propose. So when I realized they were suggesting that we go along with ODOT, that was why I
The applicant
brought the
was willing
subject
to,
up.
yeah, the applicant's willing to make a revision to the plan, which they did and showed it to Planning Commission. And then we'll agree or disagree when they bring it back for final.
Madam President.
Mayor?
They kind of split the difference between ODOT's recommendation and the original proposal. So they were going to go, that was another contingency I think I forgot about, that they go back to TMS and discuss, we present it to them and see how they feel about that compromise.
Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Teresi?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. It will be a lovely addition to that corner to get rid of that house and that building, which has been in, it appears, disrepair for many
There's a
years.
garage there.
So this really is a lovely building.
Agreed. Anything else? Mrs. Snyder?
Curiosity, was there anybody representing or from Golden Gate there?
Yes, they're here
No,
tonight.
No, I mean from Golden Gate, do you think that they'll keep that building? Because I know there are plans for the back of that.
There's, Conrad's told planning they still have a lease through 19, and once everything's approved, it's still gonna be like a 9-month build to raise the buildings there, to get the property all set up and to build their site, so they're not looking until, quite a ways down the line before they're out of there. But no, nothing as far as we know what Golden Gate's gonna do with that building, unless the mayor knows something.
Madam
Mayor?
President? No, I don't know anything, but there was another contingency that I forgot we mentioned, was that Brian Gay stays. He has to go there. Just kidding.
Roll call, please, Lisa. Oh, another question. I'm sorry.
I'm
Mrs.
sorry, Madam Chairman, one more question. Will they have to remediate the land there when they tear down the buildings that are there? You don't know yet.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Ballestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Motion B is approved. Next is motion C. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve preparing specifications and advertising for bids for crack sealing for various streets.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Teresi, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Any discussion? I think this is pretty self-explanatory. So we'll say all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion stands. Next is motion D. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve preparing specifications and advertising for bids for milling and paving of Lander Road from the I-271 overpass south to Cedar Road.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, can I have a roll call, please, Lisa? Okay, well, let's say all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Finaro was standing.
Opposed? Okay. Motion is carried. Next, we'll go on to motion E. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to authorize the sale of vehicles through Gov Deals. 2011 Dodge Charger, VIN number 2B3CL1CT3BH587682. 2012 Dodge Charger, VIN number 2C3CDX AT3CH190495, and a 2013 Dodge Charger, VIN number 2C3CDX86DH689994.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. He left a one out, sorry.
One.
Right.
Why don't you do it over? Just kidding. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Discussion, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Any comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion E is approved. Next, we'll move on to motion F. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to designate 2 appointees to the Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council for the term April 1, 2018 to March 31, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabattis, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Any discussion? Pretty self-explanatory. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Oh, I don't have names. There's no names on here.
Sorry, you designate them. I couldn't put them down. You have to designate them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Usually the building committee members has been your choice in the past.
So do we have someone who's designated mayor? Okay.
Do we need a nomination?
So we need a nomination. Who appoints the nominations?
Council.
Council. So
I'll
do-
make a motion, Madam President, to nominate the 2 building committee members.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? I guess motion F stands as approved.
Amend that, or no?
It's Diane Snyder and Susan Sabattis.
Better. They look very happy. Congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is motion G. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve the request of the Parks and Recreation Committee to allow minors under 21 years old to be volunteers at the Taste of Italy event sponsored by the city and held at the Ross C. DeJohn Community Center on February 23, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano. Seconded by Mrs. Snyder. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion G is approved. Is there any new business or comments from council? Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to say, I know Council has been given or will be given the iPads, and I think that's terrific to move with technology. But if we're going to move forward with technology, I think we should do something for the residents, like replace, repair, update the audio and video that goes out to the residents on Channel 20, so that they don't have to turn their TVs up to the highest volume and they don't have to listen to the hum that they currently listen to and complain about. So maybe we can put that next on the agenda. If we're going to spend money, let's do something for the residents.
Agreed. Okay, Mr. Mano's willing to give up his iPad, he said. So let's all remember, we're going to adjourn to executive session. Mr. DeJohn?
Just want to welcome Mrs. Fagan and tell her that I'm looking forward to working with her.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Anybody else? Okay, we will be adjourning to executive session. You're welcome to stay here, but feel free to leave. Bye-bye.